You grow up thinking corruption looks glamorous from a distance. Nice suit, dark glasses, quiet envelope sliding across a polished table, a man with a government badge and a second income. The kind of parasite who smiles for the cameras and eats behind closed doors. That fantasy dies fast. Because your life as a corrupt FBI agent does not begin with power, it begins with debt. Real debt, ugly debt, mortgage hanging by its fingernails, credit cards breeding in the dark, a divorce chewing through your paycheck like acid, maybe a sick parent, maybe a kid who needs braces, maybe just the slow suffocation of realizing that a federal salary sounds respectable until life starts sending invoices with teeth. You spend your days pretending you are one of the good ones. Press shirt, bureau seal, federal building heir. You investigate men who sell pieces of their souls for cash while your own bank account looks like roadkill. You watch contractors, politicians, snitches, and low-level crooks all making more money than you. Everyone skims, everyone lies, everyone eats. You're the only fool still trying to live on principle. Principle doesn't pay for surgery. Principle doesn't stop foreclosure. Principle doesn't keep your ex from dragging you through court while telling the judge you're an absent ghost with a badge. So the first crack in your soul doesn't feel like evil. It feels like arithmetic. A local fixer approaches sideways, never directly. That's not how rot enters. It seeps. A dinner paid for. Sports tickets left at the right place. A favor so small it almost feels insulting. Just a little information. Nothing operational. Nothing that gets anyone killed. Just a nudge. A heads up. A warning that a file is moving. A hint that a phone is hot. In return, a fat stack of cash lands in your hand. And the most dangerous thing about dirty money is not what it buys. It's how reasonable it feels the first time. You tell yourself you are borrowing from a corrupt world that already owes you. You tell yourself you are not dirty, just flexible, not criminal, practical. You tell yourself the system has been feeding on you for years, and now you're taking a bite back. That is how the trap works. Not with greed, with self-pity. You step over the line once, and the sky does not crack open. No alarms, no handcuffs, no righteous thunder from heaven. You still wake up in your own bed. You still pin on the badge. You still nod at the metal detector and ride the elevator up with men who think they know you. That makes the second time easier. Then the third. Soon you are not selling secrets. You are renting out fragments of trust, a case number, a surveillance window, the name of an informant, little pieces, clean cuts, nothing too big. You learn to shave the truth without gutting it. You learn the underworld loves moderation. Crooks do not want reckless men. They want dependable men. Men with calendars. Men with access. Men who can rot slowly without making noise. And you are very dependable. That is the rise, not dramatic, administrative. You become the kind of federal agent criminals pray for. Calm, professional, bored-looking. The perfect face for corruption because nobody suspects a man who looks tired enough to be honest. The money starts changing your posture. You pay off the cards, then the car, then the house breathes easier. You send money where it needs to go. You buy peace in monthly installments. You stop checking prices at restaurants. You stop hearing the panic in your own pulse. The relief is narcotic. You think you're in control because your life is finally quiet. But quiet is expensive. And now you have a new landlord. Because dirty money is not income, it is rent. Once people know you can be bought, they never stop collecting. They do not pay for one favor. They buy permanent access to your spine. Suddenly the asks get uglier. A witness list. A location. Confirmation that a raid has been delayed. A nudge to steer attention away from one machine and toward another. You are not just leaking information anymore. You are shaping outcomes, steering pressure, redirecting fire. This is where the sickness sets in. At first, you told yourself nobody would get hurt. Then somebody does. A witness disappears. A cooperator turns up face down. A source you chatted with over stale coffee and fluorescent light vanishes into the pavement because somewhere, in some chain of quiet corruption, you loosened one bolt and the whole machine collapsed on him. You do not see the body. That would be too merciful. You just see the empty chair, the file marked inactive, the awkward silence in the office, the way nobody says what everyone knows, the way your stomach folds in on itself when you realize the information had weight, real weight, meat weight, grave weight. That should have been the end. For a normal man, maybe it is. For you, it becomes a hardening, because guilt is expensive too. It slows the hand. It clouds the eye. It turns survival into a moral debate, and moral debates get people buried. So you do what men in dirty systems always do. You rewrite the story. You tell yourself the witness was doomed anyway. You tell yourself the Bureau burns informants all the time. You tell yourself that this country runs on polished corruption from top to bottom, and you are just another pipe in the wall. No better. No worse. Just honest about the sewage. That lie saves you and destroys you. Now you stop being a desperate man taking bad money. Now you become a professional. You build compartments in your mind. One life for the Bureau. One life for the predators circling outside it. You know how to write reports that say everything and nothing. You know which supervisor is lazy, which prosecutor is ambitious, which local cop drinks too much, which federal task force leaks like a punctured lung. Information is no longer data. It is currency, leverage, ammunition. You start using it like a banker uses debt. That is when power arrives. Real power, not street power, not the loud kind with chains and bodyguards and stupid watches. Institutional power, invisible power, the kind that can erase a problem with one phone call, delay a warrant, bury a lead, redirect a resource, open a door for one man and close it forever on another. You feel untouchable because nobody can see the knife if it's hidden inside procedure. But corruption at that level comes with a different tax. Paranoia. You stop sleeping like a civilian. Every ring of your phone sounds like the end. Every black SUV in the rearview mirror feels like judgment. Every internal audit feels personal. Every routine question from a supervisor lands like a probe under the fingernail. You look at your colleagues and wonder who knows. You look at your friends and wonder who suspects. You look at your own family and realize they love a version of you that does not exist. That's the joke. The dark little punchline buried under all that power. The more influence you get, the smaller your life becomes. You can buy comfort, but you cannot buy one clean conversation. You can pay bills, but you cannot relax at your own dinner table. You can manipulate gangsters and businessmen and politicians, but you cannot control your own pulse when an unknown number calls after midnight. By the time you reach the top of your little rotten ecosystem, you are not a man anymore. You are a sealed container of nerves. The people above you are compromised in their own ways. Maybe not with envelopes, maybe with ambition, maybe with optics. Maybe with careers so bloated they would rather smother a scandal than uncover one. The people below you are useful until they get scared. Then they become witnesses with teeth. The criminals you helped are richer, bolder, hungrier. They treat you with respect the way gamblers respect a loaded die. And you sit in the middle, too federal for the underworld, too contaminated for the Bureau. That is where hubris blooms, because once you survive long enough, you start thinking you are different, smarter than the men who got caught, cleaner than the cops in old headlines, too careful to fall. You've lasted years, maybe decades. You have systems now, Burners, dead drops, layers, distance. You know what not to text, what not to touch, whom not to meet twice. You've turned treason into workflow. You think the machine needs you? Maybe it does. But systems like this do not forgive. They feed. The beginning of your downfall is insultingly small. Not a dramatic raid, not a cinematic betrayal under neon rain. A discrepancy, a pattern. A junior analyst notices timing that does not make sense. A leak that always benefits the same orbit of criminals. A surveillance target who keeps sidestepping pressure like he can smell federal breath before it gets close. Internal affairs starts sniffing. Then the inspector general. Maybe a wire appears where you never expected one. Maybe a burner gets cloned. Maybe a man you protected gets arrested on something unrelated and suddenly decides his best retirement plan is your obituary. That is another truth nobody tells you. Your whole empire can be undone by a coward trying to save his own skin. Once the wheel turns, it turns fast. Friends become cautious. Supervisors go cold. Meetings get shorter. Doors stay shut a little longer when you pass. Nobody accuses you at first. That would be too human. Institutions don't scream. They constrict. They tighten like a snake around warm meat. You feel it. You start deleting things you should have burned years ago. You revisit old favors, old names, old compromises. You think maybe you can still patch the dam. Maybe there is one more lie big enough to save you. There isn't, because the same tricks that made you dangerous now make you obvious. A careful man leaves a shape behind him, and investigators are just hunters with better filing systems. The arrest, if it comes, is almost boring. No music, no poetry, just fluorescent light, a federal corridor, faces you know too well, hands where they can see them, badge surrendered, weapons surrendered, identity surrendered piece by piece like organs on a steel tray. Maybe you try to keep your expression flat. Maybe you even succeed, but inside something prehistoric starts screaming. Because now you understand the final humiliation. Not that you got caught, that you spent years selling the illusion of control while living like prey. Every bribe bought less freedom than it promised. Every favor tightened the leash. Every secret turned your own mind into a cell. You thought corruption would make you powerful. What it really made you was manageable, a domesticated traitor, expensive, useful, and doomed. Then come the headlines. The words you used to read about other men now wrapped around your own name like yellow tape. Corruption, obstruction, bribery, leak, conspiracy, abuse of office. The public gets a monster. The Bureau gets a cautionary tale. The criminals get distance. Everyone scrubs your fingerprints off their conscience and keeps eating. That is the most cynical part. The system that made you possible survives by pretending you were an exception. A single bad apple, one diseased branch. But you know better. You know how many corners were cut, how many blind eyes were rented, how often institutions prefer a useful lie over a dangerous truth. You were never an alien organism. You were an exaggerated symptom. A fever blister on a nation that worships power and calls it order. And now you sit alone with that knowledge, which is worth absolutely nothing. Maybe it ends in prison. Maybe it ends in a witness deal. Maybe it ends with you old, disgraced, breathing recycled air, replaying the first envelope in your mind like the first loose stone in a landslide. That's the irony. You never really sold out for luxury. You sold out for relief, for one clean breath, for 1 month without panic, for one chance to feel like life wasn't grinding your face against concrete, and in the end, panic is all you bought. So the badge is gone. The money is ash. The people you protected have vanished into richer shadows, and you are left with the ugliest truth of all. You did not infiltrate corruption. Corruption infiltrated you. That's the story, a dark one. A fictionalized descent built from harsh realities, institutional rot, and the kind of choices that look small until they start drawing blood. So tell me in the comments, what was the exact moment you think you were beyond saving? And subscribe if you want more stories where power looks glamorous from the outside and rotten from the inside.